Hi.
Hello? You don't sound that excited.
Trying to be serious, trying to do a serious
Sorry,
vibe,
solemn. Yes.
academic,
Yeah.
professional. Yeah. So we've been reading Judith Butler's Bodies That Matter. Look at Kate's as usual, which is always the right way around. I, for one, was committing myself to finishing it by telling Twitter that I was reading it. And I got a lot of commiserations for suffering through it. So I feel like I learned that there was a lot of, what would we call that, folk wisdom about the reading of Judith Butler.
Yeah. I assume that not many of those people have actually tried to read it.
Yeah, or tried and gave up quite quickly, given what the experience is like. Yeah, or have heard from other people, or have read Nussbaum's critique. So that was interesting. I thought we could start by saying something about, well, maybe two things. Maybe one thing about us. So we are like analytic philosophers. I think you have a bit more experience in reading continental stuff than I do.
Yeah. I still felt, and I said this to you while I was reading it, out of my depth, or I had this, I really grasped reading this particular book of hers that she stands in different traditions, or she comes to feminism from different traditions than we do. You know, I think psychoanalysis is one.
Yep.
Post-structuralism is another.
Yep. Yeah, I think
I think that does help to make sense of her concerns and her conception of the feminist project.
Yeah,
which we're going to talk more about.
Maybe is just good for us to flag then that we have to have some humility about our capacity to really like understand her or be the most charitable in our assessment of like what the book is up to, and me more than you, but there's a like really high bar for entry. That was my experience. It was like there was literary criticism, so like 2 or 3 chapters were all about particular works of fiction from like the 1920s-ish. There were films that if you hadn't watched the film, then you're not going to get the critique and discussion of the film. And then there was like a lot of continental philosophers, psychoanalytic theorists. I think I wrote some of them down. So there was like Althusser, Irigaray, Kristeva, Lacan, Freud, and Zizek at least.
Yeah.
And so
quite varied.
If you didn't know, like, and some of them were really drawn on heavily, right? Like if you did not know Lacan. Yeah,
and it was just assumed that you would be really, really quite familiar with them.
Yeah. So it's not a book. I mean, the publisher is Routledge, which is an academic publisher. So I guess she's not writing for the general public. But then again, she's a person who's been picked up so much by the...
Yeah, I know. It's interesting.
I don't know what that is.
Maybe it's not the content of the book, or it's the content of the book in slogan form or something that's been picked up.
Yeah. Or maybe there's a... this might be uncharitable very early in the video, but I guess there's a certain feeling that comes with reading something really difficult and impenetrable. Like it can seem profound, right? Or you can have you can kind of have new creative ideas of your own that come from how you understand those words, which might not necessarily be how someone else does. So the experience can be positive and can make you feel positively about yourself.
A little bit like reading poetry or something.
Yeah. So maybe that there's something in it where people sort of feel good or whatever. They get something out of trying to read it. She
prompts lots of thinking.
Yeah, exactly. So, So what that's just to say, if anyone's watching that hasn't tried to read it and is thinking about it, just kind of know that it's a very high bar for entry. Yeah. So what do you want to have a stab at what you think she was up to, or if there was an argument, or?
Yeah. So I think I read it as an elaboration of the claim made in Gender Trouble that sex is a discursive construct.
Mm-hmm.
I think what she's doing in this book is arguing that that bodies aren't given, they're materialized. the title is Bodies That Matter, and the matter, I think, in the title has dual significance. The first is, matter in the sense of corporeal, like bodies are made corporeal, and then I think matter in the second sense is like important or worthy or something like that. So what is she saying? She's saying that what matters about bodies is what is materialized or something like that.
And does that maybe already taps into her kind of focus on, because she sort of has this thought that like to be a kind of body that is comprehensible within our gender schema is to be humanized. So there's something really bad about being a body that isn't comprehensible or recognizable. So maybe it's a related.
Because you don't even count as a human.
Well, yeah, your body isn't even. Yeah, it doesn't count. It's not comprehensible or recognizable.
Yeah, it's not recognizable. It's not intelligible.
Yeah, so it's matter in that corporeal sense, but it's not.
But it doesn't matter in the.
Yes.
Good. Yes. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes. So that's really helpful.
Yeah. And she wants to expand the possibilities of what matters.
Yes.
In that second sense, right? She wants to make other bodies matter.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Which is that a tension? Because part of the project seems to be very much like anti-sex and gender.
Yeah.
Aimed at a kind of like, it was never real anyway, and we just kind of made it up, and we made it up in a bad way. We should have made up something else or not made that up. But then some of it is like, these ones need to be made up too. So one project is pulling in the incomprehensible bodies, and one project is getting us to stop talking or caring about bodies, at least as sexed or gendered.
Interesting. I suppose, I mean, she must think that bringing in these or insofar as the sex gender binary makes certain bodies unintelligible, she must think that bringing them in will displace that binary, right?
Oh, interesting.
So maybe the two projects are reconcilable, or the second one will achieve the first one.
Good, and that's so good. Then we can just discuss whether she's right about that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay. Do you think that's enough about the overall? Because then we there's a lot of like big themes, right, that relate to this project.
Yeah.
So maybe if we just get into talking about the themes, we'll sort of come back to that.
Okay, so to get the themes going, it might be worth saying something about the motivation. She says that she's or how she frames it is that she's responding to this worry about. She's responding to the feminist view or worry that she says, in order for feminism to proceed as a critical practice, it must ground itself in the sex specificity of the female body. Even as the category of sex is always reinscribed as gender, that sex must still be presumed as the irreducible point of departure, the various cultural constructions it has come to bear.
So this is the standard kind of second wave-ish view that there is sex and then all this stuff happens to it.
Yeah, well, that's what she's saying anyway. I mean, I found it a little frustrating that she doesn't give a single example of a feminist holding that view. I mean, I can see what she's, is she talking about someone like, I mean, there are two different ways, I guess, that feminists do treat sex as irreducible, although she doesn't say what she means by irreducible either. So I guess Firestone and Brown-Miller treat sex as the origin of women's suppression. Their oppression arises out of their biology, or their biology makes them vulnerable to their subordination. So that's the first way. And I guess the second wave is the more like, the second is the more like the second wave. The sexes are picked out for socialization into sex roles. But that's a slightly different way in which sex comes first, I think, isn't it?
Well, I was just thinking she's just pointing to the sex-gender distinction and what feminists were trying to do with it, regardless of exactly whose distinction you're following and what they thought should be done about it. So long as you think you can distinguish neatly the material stuff that's really there, her femaleness, from, that she's put into hierarchy, that she's feminized, whatever else it is, then you've got this thing that like the thing that really existed first and then the thing that come along next and was done on the basis of it or to it.
Okay.
Is that...
Well, then I do think that she's misrepresenting second wave feminists, feminists like Ty Grace Atkinson. I mean, we would say Wittig, right? But I suppose she's not putting Wittig in this group, I think. But yeah, like Ty Grace Atkinson, Dworkin, McKinnon. I think those feminists believed that sex would change with the abolition of gender, or the content of sex would change with the abolition of gender. They weren't holding sex fixed.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is, I guess I was thinking you could argue about how minimal the sex is in a sex-gender distinction, and that's why I was thinking you could still catch all of them, because it might be that like T. Grace puts a lot more or less in the sex category than Fry or the next feminist does.
Yeah.
But still they're making some distinction, and you're right, not all of them. I mean, I think McKinnon's like a really complicated example, because now that I've read Butler, I see so much Butler in McKinnon. That's weird, but so I think that maybe she's an exception. But my reading of even the ones whom we might want to call like sex abolitionist, it's like I don't think any of them, I feel like none of them would go quite so far as Butler in what they think gender was done on the basis of. And if we just call that thing sex, is that fair?
Okay. Well, maybe. I mean, I guess we have different paradigms, second wave feminists, because for me, McKinnon is like the paradigm.
Yeah, but she is Butler almost, right? So that's why...
she says she uses the term sex and gender interchange. She's Butler, but I think maybe in another direction. I guess what I suppose I just feel a bit like the disagreement is a little bit fabricated. Mm-hmm. I feel like second wave feminists would really be up for countenancing a lot of what Butler is saying about sex, right? Or could take Butler as, cautioning them a bit, like, oh, just be careful about how much you take to be, fixed or given or eternal.
Yeah, but in that point, I'm sort of on your side that she's just being uncharitable to them, because they thought Butler. A lot about, I think that a lot of the second wave feminists thought a lot about which things actually are sex, or which things are natural and couldn't be changed, and the social stuff is inscribed on the basis of. They were thinking about that.
That's right. In which case, they used the word sex and it was important for them. But I think they could have they could believe everything that Butler says and be like, okay, sure, we'll just do this when we say sex.
Yeah, yes.
To make it clear that we're talking about like sex as we know it, or sex as it is under patriarchy.
Yes.
Not the sort of popular conception of sex.
Yeah. So then she's distinguishing herself in a kind of unfair and uncharitable way.
And just and kind of unhelpful.
Yeah.
Or like, okay, what does that give us? What does it really change?
So there was like literally one bit in the whole book that I felt like I kind of like understood, and that was helpful to me on exactly this point. And it's only probably because I thought that I could translate it into the analytic philosophy framework that I'm familiar with, which is social ontology. But it was this discussion, do you remember, about the prison buildings, drawing on Foucault, I think in chapter 2 or 3.
Yeah. Because she's taking this idea of materialization of the body from Foucault, I think.
Yeah, well, it was just like, if I remember correctly, it was just something like you have just some buildings, like whatever, maybe they were used for one purpose before and a different purpose next. But at the moment, we make them a prison. But it's like so much of the making, there's nothing about the buildings themselves that are like conducive to prisonness. It's just stuff. So it's like the stuff really has no significance, the material stuff. But it's like the human, that's the social construction where it's all our ideas about these institutions and our exercises of power and our concepts that come in and like literally transform that matter into prison. And I think because I can understand, because there's debates over in social ontology about what is the university, and it's like, is it its buildings? Or what is it on top of that stuff? I could sort of make sense of that idea. And if that's how she's thinking about bodies, whether they've got some differences between them or not, that gets me on board with thinking, it's actually the social creation of that stuff that could have been anything and could have been nothing.
That's right. Yeah. I think that is her view.
Yeah. And do you think that's McKinnon's?
And I get into.
I know we're not doing McKinnon, but I'm
McKinnon's. Yes. I do. I mean, I think, look, McKinnon, and this is maybe true of other second wave feminists as well. I think that, like Dworkin, I think there's a slide from, or what I think they should be making is probably an epistemological claim, and they're making an ontological one. I think probably we would. Tell me what you think. I think we'd all be best off saying, look, until we all live under very different conditions, we just don't know what will become of us, right? Which means that we can't make claims about what femaleness and maleness will or will not be in the future.
Yeah.
I think McKinnon, what she tends to say is mostly like, what does she say? Things like, the sex difference as we know it won't exist in the future. Which is different from saying the sex difference won't exist.
But something like, I think you found me this other quote once when I needed this, and it was like the sex is socially constructed down to the somatic level or something.
Yes.
And that sounds more Butlerish, right? It's like, it's just anything we think of as sex, we literally made it up all the way down. And that doesn't mean there's no matter there. Because just like with the prisons,
that's right. But it's a mistake to call that matter sex.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
And that I think it's true that position goes further than what a lot of the second wave feminists had in mind.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Right?
I guess I see I see continuity because that's how I want to place McKinnon, right? And maybe I think I should be trying to do this with Butler too, like trying to progress a tradition.
No, I think you're right. I think it's continuous. I think we can just have this framework, sex gender distinction, what goes in what basket, and some people like Butler and McKinnon put, let's just call it everything in the gender basket, or at least so much that there would be no point calling this thing that's left over, the 0.001% that's just material stuff, sex anymore.
Yes, that's right.
Right? But I think that can be really confusing for people trying to understand the debate, because it sounds sometimes like McKinnon or Butler think there's nothing there, or it was just an entire accident.
Yeah, I guess, I find it a little frustrating and unfair, right? Because because if I asked you, okay, well, tell me what you think sex is, and you started to list stuff.
Yeah.
Then we could say, well, actually, that sounds a lot like that, like the gender, like the content of gender, and then if you tried to be really minimal about it, which is, like maybe you're trying to do this in the gender critical project, right?
Yeah.
I think actually is what you're left with really a human being.
Yeah. It would be very interesting to see
like
how
it is minimal, just matter, I think.
Yeah, how minimal can we be, still believing in a basic male-female, evolutionarily reproductive-based distinction without bringing any of gender as we're concerned with along?
Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah. And I think I'm just not sure we can not bring any of the gendered stuff along.
Yeah.
And that the human being that we purport to be talking about really be a human being.
Yeah, okay. Should we go on to exclusion?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
I've been thinking a bit about this recently, that the feminist value, the number one value now seems to be, or the goal seems to be inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And I want, like, when did this shift happen? When did we stop talking about liberation and start talking about inclusion? When did we stop talking about oppression and start talking about exclusion?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it happened here.
Yes.
It happened in Butler.
Yeah.
And her worry, so we've been talking about, she wants to denaturalize sex, if you like. Well, why I can get on board with that is that I do think there's something like politically important about recognizing that you might be putting gender or what we want to get rid of in sex, and then accepting that or taking it for granted. And so your vision of the future isn't, like sufficiently expansive.
Mm-hmm.
But her worry is more about, or maybe she's got that worry, but her worry is also that by taking sex and implicitly heterosexuality, because she thinks sex is a product of that, or compulsory heterosexuality, for granted, we're rendering intelligible all that excludes.
Yeah.
That's bodies that aren't male or female. Also, I think crucially for her, it's bodies that aren't heterosexual, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I realized reading this that that's such a different worry from what I have taken to be the feminist worry.
Yeah, I noticed that too, that so much of it was like, we have these concepts, I mean, not quite in those words, right, but I think what I meant, we have these concepts, but they leave certain people out, or they leave certain possibilities out. Like, she talked about our society works this way, and so then certain desires are unthinkable. And so you have these people, or like potential people, who could have lived in a certain way but can't because it's unthinkable to them.
So I wondered about that, right? Because if you take us seriously, it seems like, well, we actually can't have those. There can't be excluded subjects because those subjects can't be formed in our society.
Yeah.
So then who is it that's being wronged?
Yeah, good. Right.
I mean, maybe you can talk about a wrong being like the denial to us of possibilities.
Yeah. Right. Either every existing individual who would have, I guess some of the philosophers, when they're trying to pointing at ontological injustice, that's what they're trying to get at, right? It's like, had there been the category, I would have identified with it, and that would have changed what my life was like, or what my choices are. And it's an injustice to me.
So, but what they really have to say is, had there been that category, I would have been that subject. And if I'd been that subject, it would have been wrong to exclude me.
Can't they say, as I am now, my life is worse?
Then
is it the non-identity problem?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
So then who's wrong?
Had the world been different, such that this possibility was salient, I would have made different choices and come to be different as a person. And relative to that counterfactual, I'm worse off. So that's the harm. The harm is in the counterfactual worse offness or better offness.
Yeah. I mean, Butler though does also, she wants to say, no, there are existing subjects who are being wronged through being excluded or being made unintelligible too.
She's on firmer ground there, right? She doesn't have the problem of like, but they don't exist yet.
No, yeah. I guess I want to know, given her view about the formation of a subject, how she thinks such people exist.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she would say they're the product of counter discourses or something.
You mean you want to like, what a mystery that we should buy the line that the way our societies are make this way of living impossible. And yet there are some people living.
Yeah, I would just want to know how does she account for that?
Yeah, that's fair. So that's really interesting, though, that this could be the moment where the shift in attention, or at least the shift in values to what is bad, became like exclusion and who's excluded by our concepts, rather than
conceptualization of the problem that feminism is addressing.
Yeah. Or projects related to gender or something. Because she obviously doesn't take her primary constituency or theorizing aboutness to be women, right? So there's some broader project.
No. But she does think she's doing something obviously feminist, and I think given the history of feminism, it's actually less obviously feminist. That's not, I don't mean that in a normative way. I just think this marks a real shift. This is a different project.
Yeah, so what? So it could be a
project of intelligible of inclusion is not the project of liberating women from their oppression.
But could it be? So could it be that she stuck with caring about women's situation, but her concern became intersex women, right? So she could have shifted from oppression or liberation, freedom to exclusion, and still done it in a way consistent with caring about women, right? So these moves could have been made for intersex women specifically. And then I think it would be an exclusion value project shift, but not a shift to like concern with gay men and drag men and trans women and unintelligible bodies of other kinds, right?
Yeah. I mean, I wonder how much like intersectionality is responsible for this too. There's this. Maybe can I see if I can find it in a different book.
What year is this book? Because that would be 1993. Okay, yeah, so it could very well be. And she does approvingly mention bell hooks at one point, although disapprovingly that bell hooks has been agreeing with Fry and Raymond once.
Now I won't be able to find it now. But she in this other book that I've been reading, she favorably quotes a rhetorical question that Nancy Fraser asked, which is something like, if feminism can't achieve inclusion, what is it even doing?
Interesting. Fraser, is that right? She has a book called something like Inclusion and Democracy, or something with inclusion in the title, right?
Does she? Or are you thinking of you're not thinking of Iris Marion Young?
No, I think I'm thinking of Nancy Fraser.
You might be thinking of Fraser.
I can't check because the thing's recording, but I'm pretty sure, because after you got interested in this, I'm supposed to write this paper on inclusion, and so I was trying to look up to see whether Butler was indeed the moment, and there was a book that had inclusion in the title, but it's not totally clear it's relevant because it's about democratic. Of course, in a democracy, you want all your citizens to be included, so it's not clear that that's the same move.
Yes, and I think there are different senses of exclusion operating.
Yeah, you were saying.
So here's the question from Fraser. Can we overcome or at least ameliorate the asymmetries in current practices of subjectivation? Can we construct practices, institutions and forms of life in which the empowerment of some does not entail the disempowerment of others? If not, what is the point of feminist struggle? Actually, so I didn't formulate it very accurately the first time. But I just thought, wow, that's not so obviously true to me. I've always thought of feminism as being for the empowerment of women.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not for the empowerment of everyone.
No, agreed. Can you read it again?
Can we overcome or at least ameliorate the asymmetries in current practices of subjectivation? Can we construct practices, institutions and forms of life in which the empowerment of some does not entail the disempowerment of others? If not, what is the point of feminist struggle? I mean, I guess that takes for granted that the point of feminist struggle is empowerment for everyone, right?
Yeah, I mean, this did show up in some of the feminist work, right? That it's like feminism is the struggle against oppression. And it's like, and that's why we should be ecofeminists as well. And but it's not like that was universal. It's just that some people thought that was the project, and somehow there's some special place for women because they are also one of the oppressed. I mean, unless she thinks, I guess you could plug into that the view that sex is the foundational caste difference, and then when you talk about subjection, that's just the shorthand for, and sex is the thing we need to focus on because once we liberate women, we've liberated.
But I mean, Butler and I think Fraser would really object to that.
Yeah,
making sex the foundation of all oppressions.
So what does this? So this loses us. What do we lose? What does feminism lose if it accepts this shift to caring about inclusion above everything else?
Well, I think we lose sight of the fact that I don't equate women's oppression with women's unintelligibility.
Yeah, because you can be intelligible as submissive,
Well, yeah, so that's one thing, right? And I think this is maybe where I just don't have I think I don't have the background. I don't think women are unintelligible. I mean, maybe I suppose they're unintelligible as human beings, right? Like, woman cannot yet be a way of being human, as I think McKinnon and Fry say. But I don't see that as the primary problem that they face, unintelligibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, but that does seem to open up space for someone like Butler to push back and say that is the problem, right? Because so long as she's willing to plug in a like liberal, real self for women that's being misunderstood. Right?
Oh, but she
this
can't.
is so incompatible with it. I know she can't.
Yeah.
But if she could think there was a prediscursive subject, which is real woman in all her potential, who is real human now, and then she is unintelligible to man, then the project is inclusion, because it's inclusion of women's as fully human, like you say.
Yeah.
So, but that to make the inclusion project valuable for feminism, she would have to completely change her metaphysics of the person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she can't. I mean, I guess, I've thought that feminism is for women's liberation, and it believes that women will be intelligible as human beings once it's achieved that, but it's not fighting primarily for intelligibility.
But do you think she would think women are intelligible or are included in a way that, say, intersex people are not, even if the way they're included is like very stereotyped or very constructed into subordination?
Yeah, I think she would. I think she would.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think that she sees women as unintelligible in the same way she sees, gay people or lesbians or intersex people or trans people as unintelligible.
Yeah. Okay. So it's worse to be unintelligible than to be present and wrongly constructed. However we should put that. Constructed into the service of.
And I don't know if she thinks it's worse. I mean, maybe my frustration is that this problem has displaced the problem of exclusion or unintelligibility, has displaced the problem of oppression. I think there's room for both projects, though it's not clear to me that both projects should come under the name of feminism.
Yeah. I think it's clear to me that they shouldn't if the thing you're concerned to include goes beyond females.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if it,
I guess she would say, would she say their unintelligibility is a consequence of the sex binary? Yes, yeah.
What? So she, but then what?
I think I would just say, they're not our constituents. We will take care of them. The thing that Marx has said to feminists, right? Like, in liberating women, in dissolving that binary or what have you, we will make people that aren't intelligible now intelligible. Good for them, but they're not our constituents.
Yeah, unless she can make a strong criticism, right, which is that in the very pursuing of our project, we entrench the lines that will need to be gotten rid of for intelligibility.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's that's precisely her worry about taking sex, about the sex-gender distinction, or taking sex for granted.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I feel sympathetic to this when I think about the way that gender critical feminists are really insistent sometimes that lesbianism is a biological category.
Mm-hmm.
But my worry though isn't, or it doesn't bother me because I think, well, now you're making unintelligible political lesbians. I just think it's actually politically unhelpful.
Oh, unhelpful. Why?
So, or I think, feminists have worked really hard to critique sexuality.
Mm-hmm. And it's risking like renaturalizing it.
That's right, yeah.
Okay.
But that's a different worry to Butler's, right? My worry isn't about certain lesbians being left out.
Yes, right.
It's worry about it like a valid political analysis or something like that.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's helpful. Okay.
Yeah, so I guess I just wanted to, I wanted to note it or surface it, right, that there has been a shift. A project has been displaced. The project of liberation has been displaced.
Yeah.
Are we okay with that?
Well, yeah, I mean, we aren't, right? But it is interesting to note how
yeah.
much uptake her reframing has had, and these books of hers, Gender Trouble, Bodies That Matter, have had. And it's interesting why. I mean, a charitable view, I think, would be that they did speak to a problem at the time, where they appealed to something. Maybe people did think, yeah, there are these new minorities that really are like unintelligible, and that is so dehumanizing or makes their lives so bad that should be our central concern, and we can put this thing on the back burner for now. Or
well, I mean, that I suppose I'm just frustrated with that, right? Like, it's just like that's what the Marxists said to us, like, oh, we'll just deal with you a lot later. But I mean, I wonder if implicit in that is that what the projects can be reconciled. They're not mutually exclusive, and I just like thinking about this in the present moment. That's not how it seems to me.
Yeah, I mean, goes back to your point about whether it's a feminist project for her, right? So she's gone way beyond the constituency of women. She cares mainly about inclusion and intelligibility. She wants to bring in gays, trans people, gender nonconforming people, intersex people, anyone who's kind of left out of the heterosexual sex binary.
Yeah.
And once she's got those people in, are they women? No, right? So whatever they are, and however we now understand.
And are there interests in liberation, qua women?
But absolutely not, right?
Yeah.
But then if they're not, however sex and gender has changed once all those people are fully intelligible, I guess the question is, can you still do a women's liberation project from there? Or have you gone so far against what women means, or what sex and gender is, or what women's problem is, that you can't really do good feminism anymore? I don't know the answer to that. Maybe all those people become intelligible and non-disadvantaged, and we think sex is a social construction and there is no binary, but there's still some way to point to the vulva owners, the reproducers, whatever, and tell a political story about their subordination or their interests or something. I'm just speculating, really.
I really don't think so.
Yeah, okay. Because you think it's going to make the project undoable.
I guess I think of gender as class, and I guess just once you think of gender as class, how can you even like conceive of as liberatory things like expanding the possibilities of gender or opening up like more gender categories? That's just incoherent to me.
Yeah, okay, but do you think maybe this takes us to her solution, right? So, what do you think she thinks we should do? I think the drag stuff maybe comes in here.
Yeah, that's the strategy.
Yeah, because then if what she thinks we should do, we can think, well, is that somehow going to have good effects for women, or is it possible to have a women's liberation movement again after that?
I mean, what she thinks what we need to do is denaturalize sex and gender, right?
Right, which means stop thinking of them as biological, natural, given categories. Start thinking of them as social constructions.
Yeah, and she thinks that drag can expose them as artifices.
Mm-hmm. What, by parodying them?
Yes,
by doing them differently.
That's right. Yeah, although actually she is also clear, and I found this helpful. And maybe this is caricatures leave this stuff out of, but she does say something like, "I'm not." To be clear, it like parody isn't always subversive or effectively subversive.
Yeah.
One thing I think she talks at the start of the book about wanting to open up possibilities. But when I read it, I just think, what a constrained, unambitious vision of the future this is. Actually, is there even a vision of the future? Or do we all just do drag forever?
No, right, because she'll say that once people are doing drag, and once, what is that? It's the reinscriptions or something change. So
mimicry, like that's all we can do.
But if her baseline thought is we have these categories because we constantly reinforce them. Exactly. And now we change our reinforcement reconstruction practices, then we're going to end up with something new. And I suppose you could predict that the new thing is a big spectrum of femininity and masculinity, not tracking sex, a big spectrum of sexuality and sexual orientations across that, more understanding of different types of bodies and difference across that. That's got some things feminists want in it, right? Like non-conformity to norms.
Yeah, I guess I just can't see how mimicry gets us to such a world.
I see. So your objection is not then to what her predicted future or outcome might be. It's whether drag or parody or whatever is a effective way to stop reinscribing or Yeah, okay.
And it's just that feminists talked so ambitiously about the future in the 70s, didn't they? I mean, what are the things that you write about in your book, the things that they were doing? Like, they were leaving society and creating women's lands and women's organizations and things. And what would Butler have us do?
Be nice to gays.
Or do drag. I mean,
but not forever, right? Do drag until it's forever. Fine for men to go about in women's clothing. And then we haven't got those practices anymore that men have to wear men's clothing. I'm just speculating. This seems like
this is really charitable. I'm just thinking that if you think of gender as class, like Marxist sort of capitalists and workers as class, it's really hard to take seriously that drag or performativity is at all a solution.
But this is her view, right? Okay, so there is this thing that's the two categories. That can be class if you like, I think, but why do the classes persist? Because everybody keeps doing them. So this is the Fry style view of drag, right? She says if you think those trans people are cross-dressing or whatever, take a look at heterosexuals going to the theatre or something. It's like, look at the gown versus the suit. And so I guess Butler's thought we have to all stop doing that. And then once we stop doing it, we change what the expectations are. So this, in a sense, is a practical suggestion for how to erode gender norms.
And I guess when you put it that way, then there is some commonality because, I mean, what radical feminists or second wave feminists thought was that we need to stop doing heterosexuality.
Right.
Separatism was also like, okay, what is it that we have to stop? We have to stop performing womanhood.
Yep.
What did Taco Atkinson say? We have to kill ourselves as women.
Yeah. So maybe it's not worlds apart in terms of like strategy for getting to a future without the sexes being kind of stratified.
Maybe you're right.
And it's definitely undeniable that she has a bigger constituency in mind because we just care about females and she wants to care about everyone remotely subjected by gender-ish stuff.
Yeah.
But that's okay. She just has a broader project and we have a narrower project and that's fine.
I just want to keep our project alive.
Same, and I think you're completely right to note that this has like taken over and it's become like bigoted to do anything else, and that's wild. And I think it's worth noting, like of all those constituencies,
politics too.
But of like, I doubt that anyone would say that of all the other people she wants to include, we couldn't have movements focused on just them. Yeah. Of course, you can have LGBT movements. Of course, you can have intersex movements, trans movements. It's just women, right, who are not allowed to like have a theory in politics and movement, and that's sexist, right? That's just arbitrary.
You know, do you remember Marilyn Frye's discussion of Frye valorizes exclusion. It just came to mind when I was reading Butler. Frye says the thing, it's like a defining feature of the oppressed that they don't have the right to exclude.
Yeah.
So, like the slave can't, lots of examples, but like the child can't, the parent can tell the child to get out of the room, but the child can't do the same with the parent.
Yep.
The slave in the hut can't do the same for the master.
Yep.
And so Frye says that what we need to do is start excluding men.
Yep.
And in doing that, we're redefining ourselves. And it just was really, so the contrast there, right?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. But I guess Butler is just going to say, we're just shooting ourselves in the foot if we try to exclude from the category women. Of course, we should exclude from our lives or from our bedrooms or from our sexual orientations or from our politics. But policing the lines of a category that are used to create social hierarchy. I can't believe I'm channeling Butler so well at this point.
You're doing a good job. I guess I just wondered why Butler can't see us as doing something political or doing some like reauthoring of the meaning of woman in doing exclusion.
Yeah. I think it would be so interesting to try to have that out with her. Like, why do we not have a right to collective self-determination as a people? Why can't we come up with a new meaning and do that with each other, the ones who have not been?
Do you think part of what's going on is that she doesn't realise that we are doing reauthoring? She thinks that what we are doing, what second wave feminists, gender critical feminists are doing, is just like taking for granted a patriarchal definition of woman.
Yes. No, I think that's really helpful. If she can't detect the difference between renaturalizing and reauthoring, then of course it's going to look crazy to her that we want to hang on to women or hang on to biology.
Yeah, but I think it's clear. This is my frustration. I think it's clear that actually, feminists use the term woman, but they use it to name a class.
Yeah,
that's a totally different sense than the patriarchal one.
Yeah, but I think I make this. If you think it's a mistake, then I make this mistake, right? Because I do think woman is a class, but it names a sex. It's the sex.
I know, but I said, but I said this to you before too. I do think we're using the term different.
Yeah.
I don't think we're not fighting to keep the existing meaning of the term. We're fighting to keep our specifically feminist meaning of the term.
Yeah. Yeah.
Class.
But we're not women abolitionists. Neither of us are, right? Or are you?
What do you mean? Woman abolitionist?
Oh, okay. I don't think I am. I don't think I use the term to name the class only. I think because I believe in sex and I give it more content than you. I use the term to name the
you make
people.
A separation.
Yeah, the females for me are like the buildings in the prison example,
No.
and so I think they're always there no matter what. And so I'm not a woman abolitionist. And I don't think there's just the class. I think there's the people the class is made out of.
I guess I do, but maybe that's more epistemological. Like, who knows what will remain?
Yeah.
Once we free women from the class.
Yeah.
But at the moment, I want to say there is no bit of woman that escapes the class.
I agree with that.
So,
but I think that's helpful. Your point from earlier about whether it's an epistemic or a metaphysical claim. Like, if we had some humility, we should just say, who knows? We know there's a class, and who knows whether there'll be something left at the end of it to keep naming.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's good. Okay. I think we've covered most of the things we wanted to cover. Did you have a most annoying word that kept cropping up throughout the book? Because I did.
Oh, no, I didn't. What's yours?
Phantasmatic.
Okay.
Do you remember it? It was just all the time, and I still don't know what it means. So and catachrestic? Is that how you say it?
Maybe.
There was just these, to me, made up words, which probably is just me being arrogant because you could just look them up and find out what they mean.
Yeah, that's right.
But it was just spiraling in my head a lot, like these two novel words that she really overused throughout the book.
I think there's one more thing that I want to say,
Yeah.
and that's Butler seems to think that what we need to do is denaturalize sex and gender to show that they're socially constructed, right?
Yeah.
She thinks that's how we get to the future. I'm actually really unsure of that. I think we will not get to the future so long as we can't, so long as we don't have an alternative or we can't conceive of things being otherwise. So what we really need to do if we want change is provide an alternative.
Oh, yep, okay.
Not denaturalize.
You mean without a plan? Like if we're just kind of trying to like dissolve and erase, but we've got no positive vision.
Yeah, a plan, or maybe even just a description of women on the other side. Don't you think that's so much more helpful? Or if you reading Charlotte Perkins Gilman gets you so much more on board with a lot of what Butler wants to say than reading Butler?
Yeah, probably. I mean, she wouldn't accept, because what we've said already about, like, she's not doing a feminist project, she's doing a gender system project.
But in the sense of having this description of very different female people.
Yeah, so she should do Herland for intersex people, trans people, gay people. Yeah. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, I guess this is just a political point, right? This is just a point about strategy. I think feminists are really mistaken to think that if we're exposing something as a social construct will get us anywhere. I think it's well and truly clear by now it won't get us anywhere.
Yeah, or maybe it'll get us a lot of like nonsense political discourse where people fight it out over whether it's real or not, or a binary or not.
And this is the other problem, right? The slide from social construct to artifice to false.
Yeah, but you're right. Without an alternative, then what's the point supposed to be? And how do you get people on board? Because if you just got people on Twitter fighting about sex being a spectrum rather than a binary, you still have made no progress toward the world where people are more free.
Yes.
And have more options. So I think that's right.
Yeah.
You want a vision of how all this plays out once there is the kind of inclusion that she's advocating for.
Yeah.
I wonder if she would just say, watch that film I talked about.
I know, that's, yeah. But maybe my point to her is just like what you're doing won't achieve as much as you think it will.
Right. Yeah, well, certainly with her books being this hard to read, it wouldn't, even if she had a clear plan.
Yeah.
I don't know. But then what I mean, she's pretty sold.
I find it really hard to use my words, so.
What about her?
No, in general. Articulating, being coherent, it's really difficult.
You mean don't give her such a hard time for writing an impediment?
Yeah, and I think you did a really good job of not doing that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm actually surprised. I thought this discussion was going to be an absolute mess because there's a sense in which I read the book and I had no idea what she was talking about for most of it. Like 95%, no matter whether I concentrated really hard and reread every sentence that I thought I'd kind of gone too fast over or read quick, I just didn't get that much.
I found it exasperating and a little evasive.
Mm-hmm.
Just say it. No more rhetorical questions.
But not rhetorical questions in the Srinivasan way, right? Not clear rhetorical questions and evasion.
No, they reminded me a little of Srinivasan.
Sneaky evasion. More the... Because you felt, at least with Butler, like you were getting a lot of content, but the content was just sort of incomprehensible.
Oh, yeah, that's true, yeah. And I wanted some detail, like, just tell me a little bit about how the materialization of sex works, right? Like, Foucault at least has these great descriptions of how the prisoner and the soldier, how they are materialized, Yeah.
Yeah. So not our favourite book that we've ever read on our channel, probably. Not mine,
no,
at least.
That's okay.
That's okay. I think it was a good exercise to read it and try. And I think we had to set up a treat for ourselves if we made it through Butler, right?
Yes. Kathy Merriam's PhD.
Yes. So our next video, we hope, will be about Kathy Merriam, who is amazing and easy to read. Easier.
Yes, Yeah, I'm loving that.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll see you then, and I hope that doesn't take us a year to get to.